Hi guys, I think it's a bit sad that Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who was a Remainer back in 2016, is either living a double life as a Brexiteer or switched off his brain shortly after the vote and jumped on board the Brexit bus. Because here we can see him strain himself to defend the UK's exit from the EU. Perhaps one day when he leaves office he'll come clean. Anyway, he was in the House of Commons on Tuesday taking questions on Brexit from the SNP on everything from the loss of trade in Scotland to staff shortages. It didn't go well. Have a listen.
Brexit was a choice made by the British people, remains a big opportunity for the economy, and rather than relitigating that debate, this government is committed to embracing those opportunities.
Dr. Philippa Whitford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Prior to the EU referendum, the Bank of England warned Brexit would seriously damage the UK economy, weakening the pound and causing inflation. The government has now delayed import checks on animal and food products for the 5th time because the cost would add to inflation. So does that mean the Chancellor finally accepts Brexit is contributing to the UK's cost of living crisis?
Hear.
No, but of course we are sensitive about the timing of introducing those changes because of cost of living pressures. Can I say?
Well, that doesn't make any sense. So we're not going to introduce these measures as a direct result of the cost of living crisis. But these are Brexit measures. So you're admitting here that we're not going to introduce Brexit measures because of the cost of living crisis. And you just said, no, Brexit is not having an impact on the cost of living crisis. So which is it, Jeremy Hunt? This is what I'm talking about. I think deep down he understands that Brexit was a mistake, but he's in a position where he has to defend it politically. I think if you were to ask him behind closed doors, he'd say, yeah, it's a disaster, and it's a disaster trying to defend it. But that's my job now.
Say that I'm sad to see, since we met in this House previously, that she has announced she is stepping down. We have much in common on patient safety. And when it comes to the NHS, she will know that because of Brexit, an extra £14.6 billion is being directed to public services every year, including the NHS and including in Scotland.
My God, honestly, he doesn't believe this. Nobody believes it. But maybe there's a very small percentage of people who think what he's saying is correct. It's just theatre once again. This is the problem with the House of Commons. It's theatre. You don't actually have to tell the truth. Yeah, we're spending an extra £14 billion on health and education and everything because we're outside the EU. Ignore the cost of Brexit and just imagine that we have all this extra money.
Alison Thewlis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Adam Posen, the former member of the Monetary Policy Committee, has described Brexit as a trade war by the UK on itself.
Absolutely.
This unnecessary trade war has had a real impact on small businesses in my constituency, like Guild Antiques and Restoration, who have found that their orders from the EU have fallen off a cliff edge and their costs have increased. Scotland didn't choose Brexit, and we're all worse off as a result. So what can the Chancellor do to fill the economic gaps his hard Brexit has caused?
Chancellor.
Mr. Speaker, there is a certain irony in the SNP opposing Brexit at the same time as advocating a far more draconian separation for Scotland, including a new currency and border checks. But when it comes to businesses in Scotland, as part of the UK, Scotland is now an independent coastal state for the first time in nearly half a century. The 21,000...
Sorry, Scotland is an independent coastal state. Scotland is independent. Okay, I think he slipped up here. I think he meant the UK is an independent coastal state. But anyway, the question was about exporters to the EU, and he's talking about the internal market. Did you not actually hear the question? The question was about Scottish companies that are trying to export into the single market. The single market, not the internal market. And he's responding by, well, it's ironic that you want to put up trade barriers between Scotland and England. But that's not the point of the question here. If you want to have an argument about independence, we can have that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the restrictions that Brexit has placed upon Scottish exporters and English exporters as well. But in this case, Scottish exporters who are trying to export their goods into the single market. What are you going to do about that? Now, obviously, he can't do anything about that. The only thing he can try and do is campaign for the UK as a whole to rejoin the single market, rejoin the EU, and then you can bring down those barriers. But all he has is the internal market. What about the internal market?
People in Scotland who work in financial services are benefiting from the Brexit freedoms in the Edinburgh reforms, and there's extra support for Scottish pubs because for the first time we have a lower beer duty relative to supermarkets.
That's nothing to do with Brexit. Even he knows this, but he has to maintain the line. He has to maintain the charade. Like, the question was about exporters and you're talking about pubs. The question was about exporters and you're talking about the internal market. The question was about exporters and you're talking about financial services.
Absolutely close.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not just Brexit. Trade barriers having a devastating impact on Scotland's economy. The loss of freedom of movement has hugely damaged our businesses' ability to recruit staff. Many businesses have had to reduce their offer, cut their opening hours, or close altogether. And over the bank holiday, it's estimated UK pubs alone lost out on £22 million because of staff shortages. Does the Chancellor actually accept small businesses like these can't keep picking up the tab for his government's disastrous Brexit? And what is he doing to solve these staff recruitment problems?
Chancellor.
Can I gently say to the Honourable Lady that this country has actually grown faster than France or Germany since we left the single market, and I think this is a bit of a smokescreen for the SNP's own economic policies, which have led to more people out of work and fewer people in work than in England.
But the question is about staff shortages, not unemployment. And then you start talking about France and Germany. The question was about immigration. The question was about the ending of freedom of movement, which meant businesses in Scotland and other parts of the United Kingdom, but in this case Scotland, can't access the workers they need. What are you going to do about that? Obviously, once again, there's nothing he can do. There's nothing he can do about that. This is down to policies at the Home Office. So this would be better a question directed at the Home Secretary, but then she's not available. She's never available. She sends somebody else in her place, and they're just as incompetent as she is. But the question still stands. These are problems that Brexit has created. What are you going to do to fix them? And he has nothing. That's what I meant at the beginning of this. I truly believe that Jeremy Hunt is not a bad guy deep down. I think he understands that Brexit is a disaster. He understood that back in 2016. But he's in a position where he has to defend it. I think he will eventually come out when he leaves office and say, yeah, it was a mistake. We should be back in the single market at least. We should be back in the European Union. But until that happens, he's going to stick with the line, Brexit creates opportunities. I can't name any of them, but we just have to believe. And something about France and Germany. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.